Yes, Mr. Chair, I will do that. Next on the agenda is House File 1877, Critical Habitat Private Sector Matching Account Use Modified and Money Appropriated. Representative Hansen, would you like to move your bill?
Yes, Madam Chair. I would move that House File 1877 be laid over for possible inclusion in omnibus bill.
Chair Hansen, I believe you also have an author's amendment. Will you move the A2 amendment so we can get it before the committee?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would move the A2 amendment.
Representative Hansen moves the A2 amendment to get the bill in the shape he would like. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? The amendment is adopted. Chair Hansen, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. To the bill as amended, we've previously had some discussion about the critical habitat license plates. They are very popular in Minnesota, established over 2 decades ago. If you look in the information provided to the committee, you will see we have a proliferation of license plates in general. And then there is a proliferation of the critical habitat plates. I don't know if it's possible to share that screen, but I think it was in the document. With the amendment, what we did is we took the critical habitat bill that was in 1877. We clarified on which plates would go to which funds. So primarily we are having the loon and the lady slipper and the chickadee would go to the non-game programs. In addition, there currently is a cap of $7,000 on promoting the critical habitat plates. So we increase the allowable use up to $25K per year to help promote the plates. We allow that there would be monitoring of those sites that are paid for with critical habitat plates. So after 25 years, we think this is a good modernization, provides for more accurate expense for those habitat plates. We also separate out the angler plate so that would go to aquatic management activities. And I think this is a clearer appropriation of funds. The most recent plate that was adopted was the pollinator plate. And that plate was adopted by the DNR. We take the funds from that plate and dedicate them to the Lawns to Legumes program. The Lawns to Legumes program has been extremely popular. Appropriation was provided one time from the LCCMR, and the demand has been great. I believe that Representative Morrison has an amendment relating to
that. Representative Morrison does have the A1 amendment. Representative Morrison, do you want to move the A1 amendment? And I think Representative Hansen gave a description, but if you want to just clarify that for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would like to move the A1 amendment, which would appropriate general fund dollars to Bowser to continue the Lawns to Legumes program.
Representative Morrison moves the A1 amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The amendment is adopted. The amendment is adopted. Representative Hansen, did you have anything else or did you want to move to testifiers?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move to testifiers. We have from DNR and the Board of Water and Soil Resources that can help describe the programs.
All right, first up on the list, I have Commissioner Bob Meyer. Assistant Commissioner Meyer, if you want to identify yourself for the record and present your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, for the record, Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources, and thank you for allowing us to be able to testify on this bill. As you know, the governor's budget contains language that would allow us to expedite these dollars get them onto the ground for conservation. We have also been working with the conservation community very closely on adapting that proposal to fit the needs of what we see and to meet the intent of the existing program, the current program. The language in the amendment, though much better, still presents some concerns to the DNR. By bifurcating the plates by design into either acquisition or non-game or the Lawns to Legume program, we create winners and losers rather than work through the entire account as is it intended in statute. By taking the big game turkey or pheasant license plates and requiring them to be used on acquisition and monitoring. We appreciate the inclusion of inventory and monitoring because Ann Pierce will talk about how important that is. It creates winners and losers, and it reduces the funding available for acquisition while increasing the non-game funding, which is what our intentions are as well. And we just, our current proposal does not increase the non-game spending by as much as this proposal would do. The amendment also removes language in the current statute that allows for improvements of lands. Our proposal will change that word improvement to restorations or enhancements. So now, rather than allowing acquisition, restoration, and enhancement to occur out of these funds, you're just allowing acquisition, inventory, and monitoring to be used out of the acquisition dollars. In addition, by bifurcating these plates by design, it will further increase the problem that we're having on spending these dollars, as it will be difficult to find sometimes an aquatic management area that would meet the needs of the program and fit within the funding that we have. So again, creating winners and losers. Also, by taking the pollinator plate, which was recently established, and dedicating those funds to the residential landscaping projects that provide pollinator habitat, there's no match on that either. And we're concerned about what that growth will do of the pollinator plate as somebody will switch from a loon or a chickadee or a lady slipper to the pollinator plate, what that impact will be to the non-game program. I think it's also important to note that the non-game program is almost entirely funded by the critical habitat plate program, which matches the chickadee checkoff program, which actually the picture on your tax forms is a loon, not a chickadee for the chickadee checkoff. So in closing, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, we do appreciate the effort that's being placed on how to update this program. We are concerned on some of the changes that are presented and some of the potential long-term impacts that may be there for the non-game program. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, next up, I do have Ann Pierce from the DNR. I don't know, Ms. Pierce, if you have anything that you wanted to add here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and committee members. I'll just add really briefly to think about the kind of work that we're doing with the money we get from these license plates, especially for the non-game program. Right now, we have some limits on how we can spend that money. And one of the things we are looking at is broadening what we can spend it on from non-game to other rare resources and native plant community monitoring. And the reason for that is because if we, in today's day and age with climate change and invasive species, really want our best conservation outcomes, we need to be able to conserve and manage wildlife and plants together. And just a really brief example of that would be if we have pollinators on our landscape, those pollinators are dependent often on pollinator plants, and in some cases very specific plants. And we're doing lots of restoration for our pollinators on our landscape, but we're really not clear as to if those restoration outcomes are serving the pollinators that we think they are. We don't know that we are burning at the right time. We don't know that we're producing the plants that they need for nectar, for overwintering, and a variety of different things. And if we can use this money in an integrated way, that will be much more effective at actually conserving the wildlife and the habitat that we're trying to conserve with these dollars currently. Thank you.
All right, we are going to move to member discussion. We do have Dave Weirens here from Bowser if folks have questions for them. But let's move to member questions. First up, I have Representative Becker-Finn and then Representative Rulick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to thank Chair Hansen for bringing this forward. I think, you know, the issue isn't so much what an agency or even legislators have intended or assumed about the funds, but I think that, you know, the general public certainly thinks that when they're buying a pollinator plate, that's going directly to help pollinators, or when they buy a certain plate, you know, and I think We may have made it more complicated by offering more options for folks, but if that's overall bringing in more funds because more people are choosing these plates, I don't think that's a bad thing. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think that's an important piece of this discussion, is sort of what the general public assumes and what they think they're doing when they're paying these extra dollars for these special plates. So thank you, Chair Hansen, for bringing this forward.
Representative Lewick, you're up next, and then Representative Heitzman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess there's a good elements in this bill, particularly adjusting that match for the donated funds. We've got an issue there, and projects and programs are being held back by the problem there. So that makes sense to fix that. I'm very concerned, though, that we're now going to start taking money out of this fund and sliding it over to Bowser. Got nothing against Bowser, but as I understand it, those dollars will all go to private property and backyards. So how's the general public? Certainly, we want to protect our pollinators, but I think we're moving way too far afield here on the base reason that we've got this program. So I would ask the author to consider matching the governor's efforts here, but I would like to see us just let lie this, starting to parse this thing up by individual picture on a license plate, because I think I would predict that that's going to touch off a lot of tension and unnecessary competition, and ultimately hard feelings because it takes away the discretion of the Department of Natural Resources to move in areas that needed to be moved in. So again, I don't see a problem here with trying to split this up and basically pick winners and losers. So I'd ask you to hang on to the ratio changes, that type of stuff, but really leave lie this starting to parse it up by pictures on a license plate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hansen, did you want to reply?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Well, I think it's time for non-game wildlife to be the winners. It's important, and I find it somewhat ironic to be supporting competition and the market determining where the investments are. The pollinator plate was only created a few months ago. So whatever intent was established 25 years ago, the DNR created the plate, the pollinator plate. And it's perfectly appropriate for the legislature to engage into where those funds should go. There's a high demand for the pollinator plate. There is a high demand for lawns to legumes. And with the Morrison Amendment, we're providing a couple tracks to provide consistent funding, a couple of options for consistent funding for those Minnesotans who want to implement pollinator practices on their lawns, their property, which may be in the city, and that city could be wherever in the state. Small towns throughout the state, neighbors have got together to implement lawns to legumes. And the science shows that even a little bit of habitat, which is matched, lawns to legumes is matched by the homeowner, even a little bit of habitat can be very important for species like the rusty patch bumblebee, which is endangered and is our state bee. So I think this is a good bill. We've taken some of the input that we've been hearing, tried to adjust that. We've heard the governor's bill. We'll continue to work on some of the language as this bill is going to be laid over.
Representative Lewick, did you have a follow-up?
Again, since that, you're speaking about a program that was very recently created, do you already have specific issues with what the DNR is going to do with that future revenue? I mean, you really have a conflict with what the commissioner intends to do there? I mean, you talk about recently. I mean, how many dollars are there now? And obviously, we hope there's plenty in the future. But do you really have a gut problem with what the DNR may do in the future with this? That we have to go in and say it's got to be this way or no way?
Chair Hansen.
Representative Wozlawik, Representative Lewick, you may remember 2 years ago, we discussed that there's $24 million that has accumulated in the Critical Habitat Fund. 2 years ago, I tried to provide an incentive on conservation reserve land to get some of that money into habitat, and that was opposed. $24 million sitting there in the Critical Habitat Fund. And as we add a very popular plate, I think it's perfectly reasonable to dedicate that to pollinator activities. I have had constituents who have been surprised that it goes to the general RIM program versus specific pollinator habitat. I will acknowledge that RIM habitat, because we changed the law back in 2013, that state lands need to have pollinator habitat. There's a multiple use and multiple reasons for that. But with that pollinator plate, that's something that could be dedicated, particularly when there's $24 million sitting there in the Critical Habitat Fund.
Representative Lewick.
Well, I do agree that we shouldn't have that kind of money sitting there. And that goes back to fundamentally, maybe we need to take a look at putting some floors or some caps in there on how much of that does not have to be spent with a private sector match. Because we'll go right back to basics again. Now we're going to go out and fund areas on non-public land, on private property, without a long-term easement type approach, 2 or 3 years, and they can bail out of the lawn to legumes program with no fault. I just think there's a better way to approach this. So anyway, thank you, Madam Chair and bill author.
All right, next up, I have Representative Heinzman.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and some comments as well. I'm going to start just by, I hope, benefiting the public to some extent by pointing out that the pollinator plate is part of the Critical Habitat Program, and it was promoted to protect and purchase permanent habitat. So this idea that bumblebee money was going to just some kind of random here and there out of that realm project is, I think, a little bit disingenuous. I think that we need to recognize that. And then, as we're talking about lawns to legumes in this bill, I think that people need to understand we're not talking about some kind of special environment, natural resources revenue account in this amendment from Representative Morrison, but we're talking about taking money right out of the general fund again to work on somebody's lawn. And the match can be up to 25% of an individual's labor. So if we're not talking dollar for dollar here, we're literally paying $1 million out of the general fund to help somebody put in flowers in place of their lawn. Now, in some situations, maybe that makes great sense, but we're talking about general fund dollars in that amendment. I'm thinking that between the many programs, and Rick and I, we go back and forth on this, Representative Hansen, I see you smiling, and it's just something that I think the public needs to understand as we're talking about this program. I do have a question for Representative Hansen and for Bowser, though. And I'm curious if Bowser could let me know, how long do the landscaping projects that are being proposed in this have to be maintained? I'm curious if it's a one and done, or what's the ongoing responsibility?
Mr. Mearns, if you want to just introduce yourself for the record and answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is David Wyron, Assistant Director with the Board of Water and Soil Resources. The time period for the grants is consistent with how we do our cost share most typically, is that there is a 10-year expectation that they'll maintain that practice on their lawn.
Representative Heinzman, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the answer. Thank you for that. And then for Representative Hansen, I am wondering, we're making quite a departure from how these plates and the revenues would have previously been funded. I am glad that, and this is something I like about your bill today, is, you know, we're making it easier to spend some of those revenues. For $2 million just to sit there unspent and unused. You know, that's not productive. I think that, you know, we want to make sure that the dollars go where they're going to be useful. But I am curious, I didn't see a breakdown of what kind of expectation we might have in those categories. I'm assuming you have some kind of an estimate.
Chair Hansen?
Madam Chair and Representative Heinzman, I think if you look in the committee information, it has the breakdown of how many plates are sold by each, so you can see the volume. You know, obviously you have the replacement of the plates over time, stickers that go on, but when those plates are renewed, you have the dollars that come in. So you see, you can see what the market is showing on those. I think the loon is probably the most popular. And I think that data is from 2019. So the bumblebee or the Rusty Patch Bumblebee one is not on there yet. I know that they are prominently, I was just in my deputy registrar yesterday, and I know that they are very prominent in there, and people like those plates. You know, you can tell you're in Minnesota when we're debating what we should spend with a chickadee checkoff or bumblebee bucks. It's a resource-based discussion, and we are going to have disagreements. The idea here with Representative Morrison's addition is we need long-term funding. I believe that the LCCMR appropriation was about 900,000. There have been over 3 million in requests that have come in. And during COVID, this is something that people have been doing in their yard without the money. The ability to get the technical assistance and make those changes is happening all over the state. And neighbors are working together to implement this. The Rusty Patch Bumblebee is iconic now in Minnesota, and people want to protect it. And so this is with this new plate that wasn't envisioned 25 years ago, it was envisioned maybe 25 months ago, is now something that can be dedicated toward that. And providing consistent funding would help Minnesotans implement these practices to protect the resource that we all enjoy.
Representative Heinzman, do you have a
Madam
follow-up?
Chair. But thank you, Madam Chair. That was, I think that we almost got to an answer there. Thank you, Representative Hansen. But you know, there's not a handout there, unfortunately, for everybody, unless they are looking for it. So that's why I asked if you had those numbers in front of you, and maybe we could get to that at some point in the discussion around this bill. But I'm going to move on to another question. I am wondering, you know, because typically when we hear a bill like this, we see conservation groups lined up to testify, and I haven't seen any of those today. So I am wondering, number one, where are the conservation groups at on this? And then also I'm wondering, maybe DNR could come back and give us an idea how much has been spent to promote the private match to the critical habitat program, with making the adjustment that we are in the ratio required to release those dollars. I am wondering if that's been promoted well, or if there's more that we could do there to make sure that if there are people that want to participate and contribute, that they know their dollars are going further than they otherwise would.
Chair Hansen, do you want to take up that first question?
Thank you, Chair Wozlowik. The first part, you know, I think there was some comment on the original bill, and then the amendment was posted 24 hours ago. I have not received anything formal from groups. I've received a couple Facebook messages, thumbs up from individuals who had looked at the amendment. So I think they're probably digesting it as the committee is.
And I don't know if Assistant Commissioner Meyer or Ms. Pierce from DNR could help with the second question.
Madam Chair, I can answer that for us.
Assistant Commissioner, go ahead.
Chairman Hansen was correct in saying that previously we were limited to, I believe, about $7,000. I think it was actually $13,000 for promotion. So this would help us tremendously. To date, a lot of that promotional activities has been with the deputy registrars and dealers as people are buying new motor vehicles. But I think there is a lot more to be done out there for sure to promote that. And just, if I may quickly talk about the balance in the account. The account has an actual balance of license plate revenues of 16 million. There's $8 million of private donations that are there that we're working to spend down. One of the challenges we see is when someone donates money to the program, they donate it to if they donate it to a specific type of habitat, say wetland acquisition in Aiken County. Well, we all know Aiken County has a ton of wetlands, so it's really challenging for us to try to find land of certain types that people want us to do it. So it builds up that dollars. Currently, we're taking in about $5 million a year from the plates. We get about $3 million in match a year. So it's building up at $2 million a year. Now expanding it to 2-to-1 will help us buy that down. But once that 2-to-1 match is there, I'm concerned about the impacts to the non-game program. As people shift from a loon plate to a pollinator plate, for example, that will take money from the non-game program, send it to Bowser. So Madam Chair, thank you so much.
And I see Mr. Wyrens has his hand up. Did you want to chime in on this one?
No, Madam Chair. I just kind of wanted to correct my prior answer to Representative Heisman's question. The correct answer is actually 5 years. I want to verify my answer, and the expectation from the landowner is a minimum of 5 years when they receive funds under Lawns and Legumes program. So I apologize for the prior error in my answer.
Thank you. Representative Heisman, did you have further questions?
I think that we've covered some of the difficulties with the bill. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, next up, I see Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just really want to put a finer point on what I think Chair Hansen is saying, is that when, my neighbors and I, mostly my neighbors, planted on our condo, we had, a lot of lawn space, and they had heard about the Lawns to Legumes program and realized that we could grow pollinator friendly plants on our shared lawn and use our condo dollars for that instead of on maintaining our lawn. And then my neighbors very proudly showed me their new pollinator plate and said they hoped it was going, they were so excited to be able to help the bees. Some of that bumblebee money that everyone has had so much fun saying. But so I really do think people think that money is going, when they buy a plate with a bumblebee on it, they think it's explicitly going to help bumblebees and native pollinators. And so as much as we can talk about where this money is going, that's not what the public is saying. And I think by having this committee and talking about the difficulties of this, we're really showing why this program is needed. So people are also transferring their money where they maybe had a chickadee plate, and then now they're deciding that they want to instead have a bumblebee plate. I think they're really demonstrating that that's what they want that extra money to be used for. So I think this is a really great program that a lot of Minnesotans will like. And I think this is a good amendment that we've been working on to make sure that people really are getting what they think that they're buying and what they're really proud to have. I mean, these are beautiful plates, and Minnesotans are really lucky that they can take advantage of it. So I think this is a really great bill, and I think this is something that our constituents and that the public would really like to see us take advantage of. So thank you for doing this, Chair Hansen.
Representative Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to remind folks about why the Lawns to Legumes program was created in the first place. It was created in response to drastic decline in pollinator populations in general and the rusty patch bumblebees specifically. And research has shown that urban and suburban areas can play an important role in pollinator preservation and resurrection. So the Lawns to Legumes program is not about helping people plant pretty gardens, although that can be a happy side effect of it. It's about protecting our pollinator populations, which are in dangerous decline.
Any other member questions or comments? I don't see any hands going up, so we'll go to Chair Hansen for any closing remarks.
Members, I think this has been a good discussion. It's an open discussion that hasn't been held in a long time. I think this is a good compromise bill. and look forward to continuing that discussion and to protect the resource. I would renew my motion that House File 1787 or 1877 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion.
Representative Hansen renews his motion that House File 1877 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in an omnibus bill. The bill is laid over, and I will turn the gavel back over to Chair Hansen.